This video is sponsored by Squarespace, the platform you can use to build a website for your business. Cinematography jobs come in all shapes and sizes, from documentary content shoots all the way to massive budget multi-camera feature films. Despite this, the gear that cinematographers choose to film with follows the same formula. You need a camera, lenses, and filtration. In today's video, I'm going to use my experience as a working cinematographer to break down what gear you should choose for your camera package and how to create a gear list for it. In a previous video, I went through the basics of how cinematographers compile a gear list by writing down the camera, grips, and lighting equipment in a document, which can then be used to source quotes from rental houses. Or sometimes the gear can be supplied by crew members themselves. Let's take this a step further by looking at two different example template gear lists I've created. One was written for a solo operator documentary or content shoot, and the other was made for an industry level feature film where you'd have a full camera crew. I've broken the lists into subcategories of gear, listed the quantities of items required, and left a column for extra notes to be added for the gear rental house or crew members to read at the gear check. The most obvious place to start with is the camera itself. In this case, I put it under the category of a camera. If it's a shoot with multiple cameras, such as a 2-cam documentary interview shoot, or an industry job with 2 or more camera units, then I'd place them under a separate subheading labeled B camera, C camera, etc., depending on how many cameras are required. For our feature package, I put in the always popular Arri Alexa Mini, and for the documentary package, a Sony FX3. Digital cinema cameras will almost always come as a kit with basic accessories, such as cards, a reader, battery plate cage, viewfinder, and rods. If slightly more unusual extra accessories are required, such as a viewfinder extension bracket, then it's good to note these separately. Most standard camera kits will come with 3 cards. In the case of the Mini, this might be 3 256 gig CFast cards. If extra media is required, for example if you're shooting interviews which will roll for a long time, this can be requested as an additional add-on. To power this whole situation, you'll need some batteries. In the case of mirrorless or solo operator cameras like the FX3, this will often be provided as part of the camera kit, along with a charger. However, when renting professional cinema cameras, it's often advised to explicitly state how many and what kinds of batteries you'll need. A typical digital cinema camera package will carry a combination of onboard batteries, which are either V-Lock or gold mount batteries, and block batteries, which are large, heavy 12-volt or 24-volt sources of power, which provide juice to the camera through a cabled connection. These block batteries are usually used for studio-style setups, such as when the camera can be placed on a dolly, or for rigs where a consistent and large source of power needs to be supplied, like with a Russian arm. Bear in mind that if you intend to use other accessories separate from the camera, such as the focus puller's monitor and transmitter, it may be a good idea to allocate a few additional V-Lock batteries to that. This is why here I've decided to go with 2 sets of 4 V-Locks and 2 block batteries. Choosing lenses is a topic all on its own, but is mainly determined by a few key factors. First, you'll need to decide whether to go for prime lenses with a fixed focal length, zoom lenses, or both. DPs working on feature films will often go with a set of cinema primes with gears for a follow focus system. These tend to have a faster stop, such as the super speeds. DPs may also select a zoom lens which can be used to cover telephoto focal lengths. in this case at 25 to 250mm. Another factor heavily considered by cinematographers when choosing lenses is their character. In other words, do they look modern, sharp and clinical across the frame? Or do they err on the vintage side with a gentle softness and pretty bokeh? How does their look contribute to the visual language you're trying to create? Then there are the practical considerations that need to be made. Do you need lenses with a very fast stop which will make shooting in lower light conditions possible? Do they need to be small enough to be balanced on a gimbal? Are they housed in modern casings with solid distance markings which will make it easier for the first AC to pull focus? All of these factors and many more may be pondered before deciding on a lens combination for the job. If you're shooting lower budget content or documentaries, you may find that still photography lenses align a bit better with your budget. In this world, the practical considerations of the lens and its price point may slightly outweigh other aesthetic factors like the look. On this imagined documentary shoot, we've gone with some Sigma Arts, partly for their fast stop and partly for their autofocus capabilities, which makes focusing the lens during interviews and on the gimbal as a solo operator a breeze. Almost all shoots require a filter of some kind which gets placed in front of the lens. Often this is a neutral density filter, which can be used to decrease the amount of light let into the camera, which allows DPs to maintain a wide open aperture and a shallow depth of field. Even though most cinema cameras these days come with some form of internal ND system built into the body, many gearless will still have a set of ND filters, such as a 0.3, 0.6 and 0.9, to add additional ND to the camera in very bright conditions if the internal NDs don't suffice. Our chosen Alexa Mini comes with only 3 different internal ND settings, 0.6, 1.2 and 2.1. Having extra external filters allows DPs to be more precise with their exposure, so if they need a 1.5 ND strength, they could use an internal 1.2 and an external ND 0.3 filter to arrive at the correct exposure. For our lower budget documentary option, which is shooting on an FX3 without any internal ND filters, I've added a stackable 5-stop ND and a variable ND filter. Variable NDs can easily tweak the intensity of the filter to quickly get solo operators their desired exposure without needing to swap to different filters. For both shoots, I've also added diffusion filters, black pro mists and black satins, which are commonly used by many DPs. When renting these filters, they may come as a full set, however, I'll often note the specific strength of the filter that I'd like to use. The size of the filters that need to be selected are determined by the kinds of lenses you choose. Most small or medium-sized cinema lenses will use 4x565 filters that can be attached with a clip-on Mattebox. If a lens with a very large front diameter is used, such as a monster cinema zoom, you may need to get larger 6x6 filters and a production Mattebox to fully cover the front of the lens. Most still lenses, and some cinema lenses too, come with a filter thread on their fronts, like these for the Sigma Arts, which means you can use screw-in filters. When renting gear, it's important to ensure that your screw-in filters are either the correct size for the lens, or add a thread adapter which will step up the lens thread size to the filter thread size. Before we go further, I'd like to thank Squarespace for sponsoring this video and making it possible. If you want to be a filmmaker, you need a website. This is like a freelancer's business card. Collaborators or clients can visit your site to get in contact and view a portfolio of your work. Squarespace makes setting up your website easy with their design intelligence system. This uses AI technology to personalize your site and create a unique digital identity across your online presence. Then use Squarespace's other tools like SEO to get your site seen, or their payment and invoicing systems to simplify your workflow. Check out squarespace.com for a free trial, and when you're ready to launch your site, go to squarespace.com/indepthcine to save 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain. To be able to hold filters and also minimize light hitting the lens and creating flares, we need a Mattebox. As we mentioned, the size of this Mattebox will be determined by how big the front of the lenses you're using are. There are two standard sizes, 4x565 Matteboxes which can be clamped directly onto the front of the lens, and 6x6 Matteboxes which are usually mounted and held by support rods attached to the camera's plate. Clip-on Matteboxes come with different size diameter openings that correspond to the front diameter of lenses. The super speed lenses we've chosen have an 80mm front diameter, while our zoom has a 136mm front. This means that we'll need both an 80mm and 136mm back for the Mattebox, which can be swapped out depending on which lens it's being used with. Since we're trying to keep our solo operator package nice and easy by going with a screw-in filter, we don't need to include a Mattebox. For our documentary setup, we've also excluded a follow focus, as we'll be relying on the autofocus lenses or pulling focus manually on the barrel by hand if it's needed. Our cinema camera setup will however need a wireless follow focus, since the lenses are manual cinema lenses, don't have autofocus, and will have a first AC on the crew. Because the camera is an Arri, I've also asked for an Arri wireless follow focus kit. However, you may want to request a different brand, like a Preston, a Nucleus, an RT Motion kit, or if the focus puller has their own gear, go with that. I've made sure to request 3 wireless fizz motors, or focus, iris, zoom. This is in case we need to do any aperture pulls, or control the zoom function of our ingenue lens with a motor. On some long-form jobs, or if shooting on film, a focus or distance aid like a light ranger may be added to make it easier for the first AC to accurately pull focus. On most professional sets, a video feed will be sent from the camera to one or various monitors on the set. This gear is managed by a crew member called a video or VT operator. Often this gear will either be owned by the operator themselves or a VT company. Therefore, sometimes cinematographers will communicate the amount of monitors needed and leave the sourcing of said gear and how the transmission and signal distribution happens to the VT operator. The monitors which go on the camera and which are used by the first AC to pull focus are however usually sourced from a rental house as part of the camera gear. For the industry budget shoot, I've accommodated for a 1-to-3 video transmission. In other words, one wireless video transmitter will send a signal to 3 different monitors with wireless video receivers. One monitor for the focus puller, one handheld monitor for the director, and one larger monitor on a cart which can be viewed by the director or other crew that need to view an image, such as makeup or the continuity supervisor. One 7-inch monitor has also been included, which will be rigged onto the camera and may be used by the DP or operator to view the image and gauge exposure. For our smaller shoot, we've only got one 5-inch onboard monitor, which makes it a bit easier to view the image properly and pull focus than using the camera's little built-in screen. Finally, we've got 2 miscellaneous add-ons, some handles which can be attached to the camera's cage or rods that gives the operator a nice grip when operating handheld. We've also included a mag liner, which is a trolley that the camera team can use to store their gear in one place, wheel it around the set, and use it as a surface for building the camera. These two lists are a very basic guide to the kind of gear in a camera package. From there, DPs will take these subsections of gear and customize the selection of equipment depending on the technical and creative needs of whatever is being shot. Hope this video was useful. Thanks to all of you for supporting the channel and to those that get the videos early on Patreon, which comes with a template of the camera gear lists in this video. Otherwise, until next time, thanks for watching and goodbye.